The alarm bells rang through every level of the space station, making everyone stop what they were doing. Something big was happening in the far corner of the galaxy, and it was not good news. Dr. Vale ran down the metal hallways as fast as her 6 legs could carry her. Her blue skin was turning darker with worry as she thought about the reports coming in from the scout ships. For 3 months they had been watching a small yellow star with planets around it. The third planet looked interesting because it had water and the right temperature for life. The scout ships had found intelligent creatures there, walking on 2 legs like many species in the galaxy. Everything seemed normal until today. The creatures on that planet were living with monsters. Dr. Vale rushed into the control room where Commander Roth was staring at the big screen. His face looked sick as he watched the images coming from their hidden cameras on the planet. What they saw made no sense at all. The 2-legged creatures were not running away from the monsters. They were not fighting them either. Instead, the monsters seemed to be following the creatures around like trained soldiers. "Show me the worst one," Dr. Vale said, trying to catch her breath. The screen changed to show a creature that made her blood run cold. It was huge, covered in dark fur with teeth like white knives. Its jaw muscles were so big they could probably bite through metal. Its eyes were sharp and focused, the kind that belonged to a killer that never missed its target. But the scariest part was not the monster itself. It was what happened next. A small 2-legged creature, no bigger than a child from most species, walked right up to the monster. The monster could have eaten the small creature in one bite. Instead, it sat down and waited. The small creature made some sounds, and the monster laid down on its back, showing its belly. Dr. Vale knew enough about animals to understand what this meant. When a dangerous animal shows its belly, it means it is giving up all power to someone else. It was saying that the small creature was its boss. "This cannot be real," Dr. Vale whispered. Commander Roth pointed to other screens, showing more of the same thing. All over the planet, the 2-legged creatures were giving orders to these monsters, and the monsters were obeying. Big monsters, small monsters, fast monsters, strong monsters. They all did what the 2-legged creatures told them to do. "Look at this one," Commander Roth said, switching to another camera. An adult 2-legged creature was walking with 6 of the monsters following behind. Each monster was different. Some were built like tanks, heavy and strong. Others were lean and fast like racing ships. But they all moved together like a perfect army unit. The creature in front made a simple hand movement and all 6 monsters spread out in a circle. Another gesture and they all sat down at the same time. A third gesture, and they all lay down and stayed completely still. "That is military training," Dr. Vale said. "Those are not wild animals. Those are trained weapons." More images flowed across the screens. Everywhere they looked, the same pattern repeated itself. The 2-legged creatures had somehow turned the most dangerous animals on their planet into obedient soldiers. Young creatures controlled monsters that could crush them. Old creatures directed beasts that could tear apart a spaceship. "How is this possible?" Dr. Vale asked. "What kind of species can do this?" Commander Roth pulled up the data they had collected about the 2-legged creatures. They were not particularly big or strong. They had no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. By all rights, they should have been food for the monsters, not their commanders. "Maybe they have some kind of technology we cannot see," Dr. Vale suggested. "Mind control devices, chemical suppressants, something that keeps the animals under control." They ran every scan they could think of. No unusual energy readings, no strange chemicals in the air, no hidden devices on either the creatures or their monsters. Whatever was keeping those dangerous animals under control, it was not technology. "Wait," Commander Roth said, focusing on one particular scene. "Look at this." A very young 2-legged creature, barely more than a baby, was sitting on the ground. Around it were 3 of the monsters, each one big enough to swallow the baby whole. The baby made happy sounds and reached out to touch the monsters. The monsters did not move away. They did not show any signs of aggression. Instead, they seemed to enjoy the baby touching them. Their body language showed they were relaxed and content. "Those monsters like being controlled," Dr. Vale said in shock. "They want to obey the 2-legged creatures." This changed everything. If the monsters were happy to be controlled, it meant the 2-legged creatures had not just tamed them with force or fear. They had somehow convinced the most dangerous animals on their planet that being obedient was better than being free. "Sir, we are getting reports from other monitoring stations," the communications officer announced. "Every settlement on the planet shows the same pattern. The two-legged creatures are living with trained monster armies. Commander Roth felt his hearts beating faster. This was not just one group of unusual creatures. This was an entire species that had turned their planet into a military base defended by biological weapons that other species would need heavy artillery to fight. Send an immediate alert to the Galactic Council, he ordered. Mark this system as extremely dangerous and recommend total quarantine until we understand what we are dealing with. As the alert went out across the galaxy, Dr. Vale continued watching the screens. The more she observed, the more convinced she became that they had discovered the most dangerous species in known space. These creatures had not just survived on a world full of monsters. They had recruited the monsters to their side. When these two-legged creatures developed space travel, they would not come alone. They would bring their monster armies with them, spreading across the galaxy with biological weapons that could adapt to any planet they visited. The galaxy was not ready for what was coming. The research ship floated silently in the darkness behind the planet's moon, invisible to anyone looking up from the surface below. Dr. Vale pressed her face against the viewing window, watching the world that had turned her understanding of biology upside down. 3 weeks had passed since the first discovery, and now she was here with the best team of scientists the galaxy could provide. Their job was simple but terrifying. Get close enough to study how these creatures controlled their monsters without being detected. If they could learn the secret, it might help other species deal with dangerous animals on their own worlds. If they were discovered, they might become the first victims of an interplanetary monster army. Target acquired, announced Dr. Mills, her assistant. Small settlement, approximately 200 inhabitants, with what appears to be a training facility in the center. The main screen showed a peaceful-looking area, with buildings scattered around a large open space. But Dr. Vale knew better than to trust appearances. Intelligence reports suggested that every settlement was actually a military base, where the two-legged creatures trained their biological weapons. Focus on the training area, Dr. Vale ordered. I want to see how they break these animals to their will. The camera zoomed in on the open space where several of the two-legged creatures had gathered with their monsters. What Dr. Vale expected to see was harsh training methods, punishment systems, maybe even torture devices to keep such dangerous animals under control. What she actually saw made her question everything she knew about animal behavior. A small creature, obviously a child based on its size, was sitting in the middle of 6 enormous monsters. Each beast was easily 3 times the child's weight, and armed with teeth that could cut through armor plating. The child should have been terrified, running for safety, or at least protected by adult creatures with weapons. Instead, the child was playing. The child made a cheerful sound, and all 6 monsters immediately fell to the ground, rolling onto their backs and exposing their bellies. In the animal kingdom, this was the ultimate sign of surrender. Predators only showed their bellies when they were completely defeated and begging for mercy. But these monsters were not begging. Their body language showed they were enjoying themselves. Run a stress analysis on the monsters, Dr. Vale commanded. Check for fear responses, pain indicators, anything that might explain this behavior. The ship's advanced sensors scanned the creatures below, measuring their heart rates, brain activity, and chemical signatures. The results appeared on her screen, and Dr. Vale had to read them 3 times before she believed what she was seeing. This is impossible, she whispered. The monsters are happy. Dr. Mills looked over her shoulder at the data. The readings show pleasure response patterns, similar to what we see in domestic herd animals when they are being cared for by their keepers. But these are clearly apex predators, not domestic animals. The child below continued playing with the monsters, making them perform various actions with simple sounds and gestures. The beasts responded eagerly, competing with each other to obey the commands fastest. Their behavior suggested they actually enjoyed following orders. Focus the audio sensors, Dr. Vale said. I want to hear what sounds the child is using. The ship's listening equipment picked up the child's vocalizations and played them through the speakers. Instead of harsh commands or threatening sounds, the child was using soft, gentle tones that sounded almost musical. The monsters responded to each sound pattern with specific actions, suggesting a complex communication system. It is like they have developed a language specifically for controlling predators, Dr. Mills observed. But why do the predators want to understand it? Dr. Vale was beginning to suspect something that challenged every scientific principle she had learned. These creatures had not tamed their monsters through force or fear. They had somehow convinced the monsters that being controlled was more enjoyable than being free. "Switch to the adult subjects," she ordered. "Show me how the fully grown creatures manage larger numbers of monsters." The camera moved to observe several adult two-legged creatures with bigger groups of monsters. The pattern was the same but more complex. Adults commanded multiple monster types with sophisticated hand signals and vocal patterns, coordinating their movements like military units. One adult was directing 12 monsters through what appeared to be a tactical exercise. The creatures moved in formation, responded to directional cues, and maintained perfect discipline throughout the drill. It was coordination that would impress the finest military units in the galaxy. But the most disturbing part was how easy it looked. The adult barely seemed to be paying attention, occasionally making a casual gesture or sound that sent the monsters racing to new positions. There was no visible effort, no struggle for dominance, no fear that the monsters might refuse to obey. "They make it look effortless," Dr. Mills said, "like the monsters want to be controlled." "Maybe they do," Dr. Vale replied quietly. "Maybe these creatures have evolved some kind of natural authority that makes other species want to follow them." The implications were staggering. If these two-legged creatures could inspire such loyalty in apex predators using only natural abilities, what would happen when they encountered other intelligent species? Would they be able to command alien soldiers the same way they commanded their monsters? The observation continued as the local day cycle progressed. The scientists watched families of the creatures going about their daily activities, always accompanied by their monster companions. The beasts were integrated into every aspect of their society, from work activities to recreational pursuits. Children played games with monsters that could have destroyed combat vehicles. Adults brought monsters along when visiting other settlements. Elderly creatures used monsters as helpers and companions. The entire civilization had somehow built itself around partnership with the most dangerous animals on their planet. "Look at this," Dr. Mills said, pointing to a new scene on the screen. "They are taking the monsters into their homes." The thermal scanners showed monsters following their handlers into residential buildings, settling down in what appeared to be sleeping areas. The two-legged creatures were not just controlling these beasts during the day, they were living with them. Either they have such complete control that they trust their lives to creatures that could kill them instantly, Dr. Vale said, or they have achieved something that should not be possible in nature. As night fell on the planet below, the research team continued recording thousands of hours of footage. Every observation pointed to the same impossible conclusion. These creatures had somehow formed genuine partnerships with apex predators, creating a society where the most dangerous animals served as loyal companions. "Prepare the preliminary report," Dr. Vale ordered as they prepared to return to the monitoring station. "Classification, strategic concern maximum. These creatures have not just tamed dangerous animals. They have turned predator loyalty into a science." The galaxy thought it understood the relationship between predators and prey, between dominance and submission, between fear and control. These two-legged creatures had somehow rewritten all those rules, creating a world where monsters chose to be gentle and killers preferred to serve. When they reached the stars, they would not need to bring weapons. They would simply recruit whatever dangerous creatures they found waiting for them. Lieutenant Ross was having a perfectly normal day monitoring the stealth probe's final sweep when everything went wrong at once. The small reconnaissance device had been working perfectly for weeks, sending back detailed information about the mysterious two-legged creatures and their monster companions. Then, without warning, the probe's gravitational controls failed and it plummeted toward the planet's surface like a metal meteor. "Probe 7 is down," Ross reported into his communicator, watching helplessly as the device crashed into the middle of one of the creature settlements. Pieces of alien technology scattered across an open area filled with plants and walking paths. "We have a contamination event in progress." Dr. Vale arrived in the monitoring room within minutes, her multiple arms moving rapidly as she assessed the situation. A crashed probe could reveal their presence to the creatures below, potentially triggering a hostile response from the most dangerous biological army the galaxy had ever discovered. "How long before they find it?" she asked, studying the crash site through the probe's emergency beacon. "Based on their movement patterns, approximately 10 minutes, Ross replied. "There are several creatures approaching the area with their monster units." Dr. Vale felt her blood turn cold. They were about to witness first contact between galactic technology and the galaxy's most effective predator controllers. The creatures would likely interpret the crashed probe as either a threat or an opportunity, and their response would reveal their true intentions. "Record everything," she ordered. "The Council needs to see exactly how they react to unknown technology." The first to arrive was a single two-legged creature accompanied by 3 smaller monster variants. These beasts moved with the fluid precision of trained hunters, their eyes scanning the crash site with obvious intelligence. Dr. Vale watched in fascination as the creature made soft vocal sounds, and the monsters immediately spread out in a tactical formation. "Perfect reconnaissance pattern," Ross observed. 2 units providing security while the third conducts close examination. The handler is positioned for optimal command while remaining protected. The creature approached the largest piece of probe debris, making continuous vocal sounds that kept the monsters alert but calm. When it knelt down to examine the alien technology, the 3 monsters automatically adjusted their positions to maintain protective coverage around their handler. More creatures began arriving, each bringing their own monster units. Within minutes, the crash site was surrounded by over 20 of the dangerous beasts, all under perfect control of their handlers. The coordination was seamless, with each new arrival taking an assigned position without any apparent communication between the handlers themselves. "They are forming a military perimeter," Dr. Vale said, studying the formation developing around the crash site. "Look at the positioning. Overlapping observation zones, multiple escape routes secured, heavy units positioned for maximum area control." The monster types were clearly specialized for different tactical roles. Large, heavily built creatures took positions that would allow them to block any escape attempts. Smaller, faster variants positioned themselves for rapid response to threats. Medium-sized monsters with enhanced sensory capabilities spread out to provide early warning of approaching dangers. What disturbed Dr. Vale most was how casual the handlers appeared about commanding such a formidable force. Elderly creatures controlled massive monsters with simple voice commands. Young creatures directed beasts that could overpower trained soldiers. The entire operation looked routine, as if organizing apex predators into military formations was completely normal. "Sir, additional movement detected," Ross reported. "More handlers arriving with specialized monster variants we have not cataloged before." The screen showed new arrivals bringing creatures with different fur patterns and body structures. These appeared to be environmental specialists, possibly adapted for extreme weather conditions or specific terrain types. Some handlers brought monsters with unusual markings and distinctive features, suggesting they had been selectively bred for particular purposes. Dr. Vale realized they were witnessing something unprecedented, a civilization that had not only tamed dangerous predators, but had developed them into specialized military units for different tactical situations. These creatures had turned biological evolution into a weapons development program. "Focus on the investigation team," she instructed. Small group of handlers was conducting a systematic examination of the probe debris. They moved methodically, collecting pieces and studying them with what appeared to be scientific curiosity rather than fear or hostility. The monsters remained alert but showed no signs of aggression toward the unknown technology. One handler held up a particularly intact piece of the probe's sensor array, showing it to the others. The group gathered around, studying the alien device while their monster units maintained perfect formation around them. It was clear that these creatures had encountered unknown objects before, and had developed standard procedures for dealing with them. "They are treating this as a routine investigation," Dr. Vale noted. "No panic, no aggressive response, just methodical examination. These creatures are accustomed to dealing with unusual situations." The investigation continued for over an hour, with handlers systematically cataloging every piece of debris while their monster units maintained security. The entire operation demonstrated a level of organization and tactical thinking that would impress veteran military observers from any species. One particular scene caught Dr. Vale's attention. A very young creature, no larger than her smallest assistant, was examining a piece of the probe's communication system while surrounded by 4 enormous monsters. Each beast was capable of destroying a combat vehicle, yet they remained perfectly calm as the young creature handled the potentially dangerous alien technology. "That young one is commanding 4 heavy assault units while conducting technical analysis," Ross observed. The level of multitasking and threat management is remarkable. The young creature made a series of vocal sounds, and the monsters immediately shifted to a different formation that provided better lighting for the examination. The beasts moved with such precision that they managed to block wind and create shadows without being asked, anticipating their handlers' needs before commands were given. As the handlers began collecting the debris for removal, Dr. Vale realized the full implications of what they had witnessed. These creatures had not just created a society where dangerous predators served as military units. They had developed such natural authority that even their youngest members could command apex predators while performing complex technical tasks. "Prepare a priority transmission to command," Dr. Vale ordered. Classification. Immediate strategic revision. These creatures are not just predator controllers. They are natural military coordinators who have turned their entire ecosystem into an integrated defense network. The crashed probe had revealed something far more significant than advanced biology or unusual behavior patterns. It had shown the galaxy what it would face when these creatures reached the stars. A species that could turn any planet's dangerous fauna into coordinated military assets within a single generation. When they arrived in galactic space, they would not need to bring conventional weapons or large military forces. They would simply recruit whatever dangerous creatures they found on each world they visited, creating instant tactical advantages that could overwhelm established defense systems. The galaxy had been preparing for technological threats, economic competition, and conventional military challenges. No one had considered the possibility of a species that could weaponize local ecosystems simply by talking to them. The holographic disguise felt strange against Captain Stone's skin as he materialized on an alien world for the first time in his career. The advanced technology made him look like one of the two-legged creatures, complete with their pale skin and unusual facial features. His mission was dangerous but necessary. Infiltrate their society and discover how they had achieved perfect control over apex predators. Stone had volunteered for this assignment, despite knowing the risks. As a veteran intelligence officer who had survived encounters with 3 different hostile species, he understood the strategic importance of learning these creatures' secrets. If the Galactic Council could replicate their methods, it would change the balance of power throughout known space. The landing coordinates had been carefully chosen, a small community on the edge of a larger population center, where a lost traveler might appear without immediately attracting attention. Stone activated his universal translator and began walking toward the nearest cluster of structures, preparing to encounter the most effective biological weapons program in galactic history. The first thing that surprised him was the atmosphere. Instead of the harsh sounds and aggressive energy he expected from a military training facility, the settlement was filled with gentle noises. Soft vocal sounds came from every direction, mixed with what sounded like expressions of contentment from the predators themselves. Stone approached the first handler he encountered, an adult creature walking with 2 medium-sized predators. He expected to witness the iron discipline and constant vigilance required to keep such dangerous animals under control. Instead, he saw something that made no sense according to established military doctrine. "Excuse me," Stone said, using his prepared cover story. "I am lost and seeking directions to the nearest transportation center." The handler turned toward him with a facial expression that his cultural database identified as friendliness. But Stone's attention was focused on the 2 predators flanking the creature. Up close, their size and obvious physical power were even more intimidating than the intelligence reports had suggested. "Of course," the handler replied. "You need to head toward the main road about 2 kilometers in that direction." "Are you visiting from another settlement?" Stone nodded while studying the predator's behavior. They showed no aggression toward a complete stranger, despite his obvious alien scent and unfamiliar appearance. Their body language suggested they were actually curious about him rather than suspicious. "These are impressive specimens," Stone said, hoping to learn about their training methods. "They must require intensive conditioning to maintain such discipline around strangers." The handler looked confused. "Conditioning?" "Oh, you mean training. Not really, they are naturally well-behaved. This is Lucy and this is Sam. They were both rescued from the local animal shelter." Stone felt his understanding shift. Animal shelter suggested these predators had been captured from the wild and domesticated through advanced techniques. The fact that the handler referred to them by individual names indicated a sophisticated identification system for managing large numbers of biological assets. "They were captured as wild animals?" he asked. "Captured?" The handler laughed. "No, they were just abandoned pets that needed new homes. Lucy here was left at the shelter as a puppy, and Sam's previous family could not care for him anymore." The translator was clearly malfunctioning because the word pets made no sense in this context. These were obviously biological weapons, not pets. Stone decided to probe deeper into their resource management systems. They must require significant resources to maintain. The feeding costs alone for predators this size. "Oh, they do eat quite a bit," the handler agreed. "But they are worth every penny. They bring so much happiness to our family. Lucy especially loves playing with the children." Stone felt a chill run through his disguised form. These creatures were using apex predators to interact with their offspring. It was either the most confident display of control he had ever witnessed, or evidence of conditioning so advanced that the predators posed no threat even to the most vulnerable members of their society. As they continued walking, Stone observed the interaction between the creature and its biological assets. What he saw challenged every military principle he had learned during his career. The handler was not maintaining dominance through fear or aggression. Instead, the creature seemed to be engaging in what could only be described as affectionate behavior. Gentle touches, soft vocalizations, and positive reinforcement whenever the predators performed desired actions. "Sam, sit," the handler said casually. The massive predator immediately dropped into a sitting position, its eyes fixed on the handler with obvious attention. But instead of the tense alertness Stone expected from a military unit awaiting orders, the creature appeared relaxed and content. "Good boy," the handler said, reaching out to touch the predator's head. Stone watched in amazement as the handler's fingers made direct contact with one of the creature's most vulnerable areas. Any normal predator would react violently to such contact from a potential threat, yet this one not only tolerated it, but seemed to enjoy the interaction. The tactical implications were staggering. These creatures had achieved such complete psychological control over their predators that the animals actually craved physical contact with their handlers. It was conditioning that went beyond military training into something approaching total loyalty programming. They reached the main settlement area, where Stone encountered scenes that defied all his expectations about predator management. Everywhere he looked, dangerous creatures were integrated into normal civilian activities. They accompanied handlers to commercial areas, recreational spaces, and residential dwellings. Most disturbing of all, young creatures barely out of infancy were playing with predators that outweighed them by significant margins. Stone watched in horrified fascination as children commanded creatures that could easily overpower trained soldiers, using nothing more than simple vocal sounds and hand gestures. He approached a group of youngsters who appeared to be conducting combat training with several large predators. This would surely reveal the harsh methods required to maintain such discipline in dangerous animals. Instead, he witnessed something that made his blood run cold. The children were throwing objects, and the predators were racing to retrieve them at incredible speeds. When the creatures returned with the objects, they voluntarily placed them at the children's feet and waited eagerly for the next command. It was precision drill disguised as recreational activity. One child, no larger than Stone's smallest crew member, was directing a predator that could have easily destroyed a combat mech. The creature hung on the child's every word, responding to commands with enthusiastic obedience that would be the envy of any military unit. "His name is Rex," the child said, noticing Stone's attention. "He is a very good boy. Do you want to pet him?" Stone found himself face to face with one of the largest predators he had encountered. The creature approached him with what his sensors indicated were friendly intentions, but Stone knew he was looking at a biological weapon that could tear him apart in seconds. The child was casually offering to let a complete stranger make physical contact with their primary military asset. It was either supreme confidence in their control methods or evidence that these predators had been so thoroughly conditioned that they posed no threat even to unknown individuals. Stone reached out carefully and made contact with the creature's fur. The predator remained completely calm, even seeming to enjoy the interaction. It was a demonstration of control so complete that it defied everything he knew about predator behavior. As Stone continued his infiltration throughout the day, He realized that everything the Galactic Council believed about this species was fundamentally wrong. These creatures had not developed a military program using apex predators. They had somehow achieved such natural authority that the most dangerous animals on their planet had voluntarily become their companions. The strategic implications were beyond anything the galaxy had ever encountered. When these creatures reached the stars, they would not need to conquer through superior technology or military force. They would simply inspire the same loyalty in whatever dangerous species they encountered, turning every world they visited into an instant military advantage. The ancient gong that had not been struck in over 3 centuries echoed through the vast council chambers, its deep tone sending vibrations through the crystal walls and into the hearts of every representative present. Emergency sessions of this magnitude were called only when the galaxy faced threats that could alter the course of civilization itself. Today, 47 different species had gathered to discuss something that challenged their understanding of life itself. Chancellor Vell took her position at the center of the chamber, her ancient wisdom evident in every movement. She had guided the galaxy through wars, plagues, and the discovery of 12 new intelligent species, but the reports flowing in from the Outer Rim monitoring stations were unlike anything in her long experience. Honored representatives, Chancellor Vell began, her voice carrying to every corner of the massive chamber. We convene today to address intelligence reports concerning a newly discovered species that may fundamentally alter the balance of power throughout known space. The main viewing screen activated, displaying the preliminary footage from the human monitoring missions. Representatives watched in stunned silence as small bipedal creatures commanded massive predators with simple sounds and gestures. The beasts obeyed without question, performing complex maneuvers that would challenge the finest military units. Representative Davis from the Aquatic Confederation was the first to speak when the floor was opened. Her species had evolved on an ocean world where predator control meant the difference between survival and extinction, making her uniquely qualified to understand the implications of what they were witnessing. Esteemed colleagues, Davis announced, her voice tight with concern, what we are observing represents an unprecedented threat to galactic stability. These creatures have weaponized biological evolution itself, creating armies of apex predators that respond to their commands with military precision. The chamber erupted in concerned discussions as representatives processed the implications. Species that had relied on technological superiority for millennia were suddenly facing the possibility of enemies who could recruit local fauna as instant allies on any world they visited. Defense Minister Walsh from the Silicon Collective stood to address the assembly. His species had created some of the galaxy's most advanced military technology, but even their weapon systems paled in comparison to what they were witnessing on the screens. The tactical analysis is unambiguous, Walsh declared, his metallic voice ringing through the chamber. These beings have achieved what our military scientists have attempted for centuries. They have created perfect soldier-commander bonds using biological rather than technological means. Each settlement represents a military installation defended by creatures that would require heavy artillery to neutralize. Dr. Finn from the Academic Consortium requested permission to speak. Her background in xenoanthropology had given her a different perspective on the intelligence reports, and she believed the Council was allowing fear to cloud their judgment. Honored representatives, Dr. Finn began carefully, I believe we are misinterpreting what we are observing. Yes, these beings have achieved remarkable control over dangerous predators, but consider the broader implications. A species capable of forming such bonds with hostile creatures might represent the galaxy's greatest hope for peaceful coexistence rather than its greatest threat. Representative Davis immediately objected. Peaceful coexistence does not require armies of biological weapons. The footage clearly shows military formations, tactical exercises, and strategic positioning. These beings are preparing for expansion, not friendship, or, Dr. Finn countered, they have achieved such natural authority that what we interpret as military training is simply normal interaction between species. Consider this. If they intended conquest, why have they remained confined to their home system despite having spaceflight capability for decades? The chamber fell silent as representatives considered this perspective. It was true that the bipedal creatures had developed interplanetary travel but had shown no signs of expansionist behavior beyond their own solar system. Chancellor Vell called for the latest intelligence reports to be presented. The screen filled with new footage from Captain Stone's infiltration mission, showing scenes that deepened the mystery rather than resolving it. The assembled representatives watched as Stone observed children playing with massive predators in what appeared to be recreational activities. The creatures performed complex behaviors in response to simple commands, but their body language suggested enthusiasm rather than fear-based compliance. This footage reveals something unprecedented, Dr. Finn observed. These predators show no stress responses typical of military conditioning. Their biological readings indicate genuine contentment and voluntary cooperation with their handlers. Minister Walsh remained unconvinced. Contentment makes them more dangerous, not less threatening. A willing soldier is always more effective than a coerced one. These beings have achieved something beyond mere training. They have created fanatical loyalty in apex predators. The debate intensified as more evidence was presented. Thermal scans showing predators sleeping in residential areas with their handlers. Behavioral analysis indicating that the creatures genuinely enjoyed interaction with the bipedal beings. Tactical assessments demonstrating military-level coordination achieved through seemingly casual communication. Representative Kira from the Deep Space Mining Guild raised a point that had been overlooked in the strategic discussions. We are debating their intentions while ignoring their capabilities. Whether they seek conquest or peace, these beings possess abilities that could destabilize existing power structures throughout the galaxy. Every world they visit becomes a potential military asset through recruitment of indigenous predators. The truth of this statement resonated throughout the chamber. The galaxy's current balance of power was based on technological and numerical advantages that could be neutralized by a species capable of recruiting allies from any ecosystem they encountered. Consider the mining operations on Rigel 7, Kira continued. We lose dozens of workers annually to the local predator species despite advanced defensive systems. These beings could potentially walk onto that world and recruit those same predators as protective allies within days. Dr. Finn saw an opportunity to present her alternative analysis. Representative Kira has inadvertently highlighted the opportunity these beings represent. Instead of viewing them as threats, we should consider them as potential partners. Every species in this chamber struggles with dangerous predators on their homeworlds. These beings have achieved perfect harmony with theirs. Harmony built on domination, Minister Walsh replied grimly. Perfect control achieved through unknown methods that could be turned against any species they encounter. Chancellor Vell observed the debates with growing concern. The council was deeply divided between those who saw military threats and those who saw unprecedented opportunities. The decision they made would determine whether first contact proceeded through diplomacy or military intervention. What does our psychological analysis suggest about their fundamental nature? Chancellor Vell asked. Dr. Finn consulted her data tablets. All evidence suggests a species with natural leadership abilities that transcend normal predator-prey relationships. They appear to inspire genuine loyalty rather than enforce it through fear or conditioning, which makes them either natural allies or the most dangerous conquerors the galaxy has ever faced. Minister Walsh concluded. The chamber buzzed with intense discussions as representatives considered their options. Military intervention could provoke a species with unknown capabilities. Diplomatic contact carried the risk of revealing galactic weaknesses to potential enemies. Continued observation might allow them to develop interstellar capabilities before the galaxy was prepared to respond. After hours of debate, Chancellor Vell called for a preliminary vote on three options: immediate military containment, diplomatic first contact, or expanded covert observation. Military intervention was rejected by a narrow margin, largely due to concerns about provoking a species with unknown defensive capabilities. Expanded observation was also rejected, as the crashed probe incident had demonstrated that covert monitoring could not be maintained indefinitely. The Council voted to authorize diplomatic contact, but with unprecedented security measures. A full battle fleet would accompany the diplomatic mission, positioned to respond to aggressive actions while demonstrating the galaxy's own military capabilities. As the session concluded, Chancellor Vell addressed the assembled representatives with words that would be remembered throughout galactic history. Today we stand at a crossroads that will define the future of our civilization. We are about to make contact with a species that has achieved something we believed impossible. Perfect harmony between predator and prey, between intelligence and instinct. Whether they prove to be our salvation or our doom will depend on the wisdom of our approach and the nature of their response. 12 massive starships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the human solar system, their hulls gleaming with the combined technologies of 47 different civilizations. The diplomatic fleet had been carefully designed to demonstrate both peaceful intentions and overwhelming military capability, a delicate balance that Ambassador Grant hoped would impress the galaxy's most dangerous biological weapons specialists without provoking them to war. Ambassador Grant stood in the flagship's observation lounge, reviewing intelligence reports that still made no sense despite months of analysis. The humans had achieved perfect control over apex predators using methods that defied every known principle of animal psychology. Their settlements were defended by creatures that could tear apart combat mechs, yet they treated these biological weapons like beloved family members. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface," Communications Officer Brooks announced from the bridge. Standard mathematical sequences followed by pictographic communication attempts. They appear to be requesting peaceful dialogue. Grant felt a mixture of relief and apprehension wash through him. The humans were responding with diplomatic protocols rather than mobilizing their biological weapons for planetary defense. It suggested either supreme confidence in their capabilities or genuine peaceful intentions. "Respond with standard first contact greetings," Grant ordered. "Request permission to send a diplomatic mission to their primary population center for formal negotiations." The response arrived within hours, containing detailed landing coordinates and what appeared to be safety information for visiting aliens. The location was a large open area in the center of their largest city, surrounded by the familiar walking paths and vegetation that intelligence reports had identified as predator training facilities. "They want us to land directly in the center of their military complex," observed Security Chief Torres grimly. "Either this is a demonstration of their control capabilities, or they are planning to surround us with their biological assets." Grant studied the proposed landing site through the ship's advanced sensors. It was indeed surrounded by areas where large numbers of predators had been observed, but thermal scans showed normal civilian activity rather than military mobilization. Humans were moving freely through the area with their predator companions, showing no signs of preparation for hostile contact. "It could be a test of our intentions," Grant mused. "They may want to demonstrate their defensive capabilities before beginning serious negotiations. Or they could be choosing a location where we can observe their society firsthand." The diplomatic shuttle Harmony descended through Earth's atmosphere carrying a team specifically chosen to make the best possible impression on natural military commanders. Ambassador Grant was accompanied by xenobiologists, tactical analysts, and cultural specialists representing multiple species, each wearing ceremonial attire appropriate for greeting what the Council believed to be the galaxy's most effective predator control specialists. As they approached the landing site, Grant could see groups of humans gathering around the designated area, many accompanied by their biological companions. The creatures were clearly apex predators with obvious adaptations for hunting and combat. Yet they moved calmly among the civilian population without any visible restraint systems. The shuttle touched down in the center of the large open space, surrounded by curious humans and their predator units. Through the viewports, Grant could see dozens of the dangerous creatures within immediate striking distance, ranging from medium reconnaissance types to heavy assault variants that could overwhelm a small military unit. Sensors indicate over 60 biological weapons within immediate proximity, Security Chief Torres reported. Various size classifications all appearing to be under perfect handler control. No visible restraint or containment systems detected. Grant activated the shuttle's external communication system and took a deep breath. "This is Ambassador Grant of the Galactic Council, requesting permission to begin formal diplomatic contact with your leadership." A lone human approached the shuttle, accompanied by what appeared to be a golden-furred predator of medium size. The human made vocal sounds toward the creature, which immediately sat in a perfect display of disciplinary response. The demonstration was clearly intended to show the level of control humans maintained over their biological assets. "Welcome to Earth," the human called out through the universal translator. "I am Mayor Wilson, and this is Max." We are honored by your visit and look forward to learning about your civilization. Grant emerged from the shuttle with his diplomatic team, each member carefully observing the predator formation surrounding them. The creatures showed obvious interest in the newcomers but remained under perfect control of their handlers. It was a demonstration of discipline that would impress any military observer. Mayor Wilson approached with his predator companion walking calmly beside him. Grant prepared for formal introductions between military commanders, expecting to address both the human leader and the biological unit according to proper interspecies protocols. Honored Mayor Wilson, Grant began formally, I bring greetings from the Galactic Council to your species and your allied forces. He turned toward the Golden Predator and bowed respectfully. And to you, noble Alpha Unit, I offer recognition of your tactical capabilities and request permission to address your commanding officer. The human looked confused while the Predator responded by dropping a small spherical object at Grant's feet. The ambassador interpreted this as either a diplomatic gift or a demonstration of the creature's training precision. Either way, proper protocol required acknowledgement of the gesture. Grant knelt down carefully and picked up the object, noting its worn surface that suggested frequent use in training exercises. I accept this token of greeting and offer my respect for your coordination capabilities. The Predator's response was immediate and alarming. The creature launched itself toward Grant with speed that triggered panic responses from his security team. Before anyone could react, the massive Predator was making direct physical contact with the ambassador's face, its mouth open and displaying impressive dental equipment. Max, down, Mayor Wilson called out, and the Predator immediately backed away, though it continued showing obvious excitement about the interaction. Grant stood slowly, his diplomatic training keeping him calm, despite the obvious demonstration of how quickly these biological weapons could strike when commanded. The creature had clearly been ordered to show restraint. But the message was unmistakable. These predators could attack with lethal precision whenever their handlers chose to release them. I apologize for Max's enthusiasm, Mayor Wilson said with what appeared to be embarrassment. He gets excited when meeting new people. He just wanted to say hello. The casual way the human referred to such a precisely controlled attack demonstration impressed Grant. These commanders were so confident in their control systems that they could order precision strikes and dismiss them as social interactions. Your tactical demonstration is noted and appreciated, Grant replied formally. The precision of your biological units is remarkable. Mayor Wilson's confusion deepened visibly. Biological units? I think there might be a translation error. Max is just my dog. He is a pet, not a weapon. Grant felt the conversation taking an unexpected turn. The translator was clearly having difficulty with military terminology. Pet was obviously a command classification he was unfamiliar with, probably related to care and maintenance of biological assets. Of course, Grant agreed diplomatically. Your pets are clearly well-maintained and highly trained. The Council is impressed by your species' natural command abilities. Command abilities? Mayor Wilson laughed, a sound that Grant's cultural database identified as expressing amusement rather than hostility. I think you are giving us too much credit. Dogs are just naturally friendly creatures. They have been companions to humans for thousands of years. The word companion sent shockwaves through Grant's understanding of the situation. These humans had been working with biological weapons for thousands of years, developing the partnership into an art form that produced perfect interspecies military cooperation. As the formal meeting continued, more humans arrived with their predator units, each demonstrating the casual control that had so impressed galactic observers. Children commanded creatures that could overpower soldiers. Elderly humans directed biological assets with simple vocal cues. The entire society had evolved to work in perfect harmony. With apex predators, it was not until human diplomat Susan Park arrived and began explaining the actual relationship between humans and dogs that the cosmic misunderstanding began to unravel. The revelation that these biological weapons were actually beloved companions kept for emotional rather than tactical purposes struck the galactic delegation like a physical blow. You mean they are not military assets? Grant asked in complete amazement. Military assets? Susan laughed, the same sound of amusement her mayor had made. They are family members. We keep them because they make us happy and provide companionship, not because they are useful for fighting. Grant looked around at the dozens of apex predators that had terrified galactic intelligence analysts for months. Creatures capable of destroying combat vehicles were being used for emotional support. Species that represented ultimate biological weapons had been domesticated for friendship. As understanding dawned, Grant realized that the galaxy had discovered something far more remarkable than natural military commanders. They had found a species so inherently peaceful and nurturing that they had transformed their planet's most dangerous predators into beloved companions. His final report to the Galactic Council would recommend immediate alliance, noting that any species capable of inspiring such loyalty and affection in apex predators represented the galaxy's greatest hope for lasting peace throughout the stars. Humanity had not weaponized their ecosystem. They had somehow weaponized love itself, turning killers into friends through nothing more than kindness and understanding.